Cooking at home can be a way to eat on a budget, or just a nice way to stay in and control what you're eating. But sometimes deciding what to cook can take so much planning and can be so confusing that it's simpler to just head to a restaurant and let them take care of it. That's something cook and former senior food editor of Bon Appetit magazine, Allison Roman, is hoping to remedy. Her cookbook, Dining In, offers realistic cooking options for at-home chefs looking for some go-to staples.
The impetus behind it was really just to say, listen, you can have as exciting a meal in your own kitchen as you can in a restaurant, and then it becomes food as entertainment and hobby, and you're obviously feeding people, so it's practical. But I don't know, there's something nice about being able to cook and eat exactly how you want to. And eating in a restaurant doesn't always afford you that luxury. And it also gets expensive and finding a place to go. And, there's a lot of hassle involved with, I love going to restaurants. I truly do. But I think that eating at home and dining in is a totally different experience. And kind of embracing that and having people over and cooking for people you love, it's a different way to spend your time and your money. But it doesn't mean that the food has to suffer.
One of her recipes, a chocolate chip shortbread cookie, has even been dubbed the internet's most famous cookie due to so many foodies trying the recipe at home and sharing their results on Instagram. So how did her new spin on an old classic gain so much attention? Even Roman isn't entirely sure.
I think, it was the perfect storm of a recipe feeling familiar and also new at the same time, which is exciting. But also, I did a fair amount of promotion of the cookie, but only because I noticed people making it. I just kind of fed the fire. I didn't try to make it a thing. It just kind of became a thing, which was really exciting. And, I just think that people like to be involved in stuff, and, the inclusion of other people's versions of the cookie makes people feel good. It's like one thing to see a recipe in a cookbook and think, oh, I can make that, and you make it and it looks nothing like it, and you feel embarrassed or ashamed or disappointed in yourself. But to kind of celebrate those differences and say, oh, here's this one cookie recipe. Everybody's kind of look a little bit different, but they're all the same, and there's something really nice about that.
Roman says that reaction is exactly what she was hoping for when she was writing the book. She wants her recipes to be something everyone can enjoy, which is not always the case.
I get in the shoes of the home cook because I am a home cook, and I want to think, what is this person asking me to do when I read a recipe, and am I really going to do it? And oftentimes, if a person reads a recipe and there's stuff they don't like or an ingredient they can't find, they're either not going to make the recipe at all, or they're going to make it without it, and it's probably not going to be as good. So I try to just get in front of that and not make anything too off-putting or challenging, and just from the get-go, make it accessible. Like, these are ingredients I've heard of, and if you haven't, then I'm going to explain what they are and tell you why you should buy them. It's not just about your ego. It's not about you as a cook or a chef and what you know how to make, but it's about getting other people to cook. And they'll only do that if they can feel empowered and if they feel like the recipe is approachable enough and they're not put out by having to spend 4 hours doing something or track down 18 different spices and, use every pot in their kitchen. So, I try to just kind of think, what would I do? And am I going to use 8 different pots? Definitely not. Am I going to, run all over town and go to the butcher and go to the spice store and go here and go here and go here? Probably not. I want to do something that feels realistic and practical, but also nice and special at the same time.
So how does Roman start writing her recipes? She says that for her, it begins with the name.
I kind of envision what this is and what it would taste like and how it's going to eat, how long it's going to take to cook and all that stuff. From then I start developing, I start cooking, and occasionally things just don't work. They don't click. And, they need another ingredient, or they need to be scrapped entirely, or I decide, oh, this is actually better with chicken, not pork. There's a lot of different ways that a recipe can go, a lot of different avenues it can go down. And, a lot of it is in the name. And I think that you're not going to make something unless it sounds really good. And one of the things people have told me about this cookbook is they say, I read it, and without even cooking from it, everything sounds like something I want to make. And that's really important. And I think it's, the same thing with a menu in a restaurant. If something doesn't sound appetizing or wonderful, then you're probably not going to order it. So oftentimes a lot of it's just like in how you describe something or word it.
In addition to writing the cookbook, Roman does have some tips for those of us who dream of making healthier meals at home as an alternative to eating out. She says one of the easiest is to make sure you stock your house full of healthy ingredients.
I'm a huge fan of vegetables. I cook vegetables for every meal. And oftentimes it's the bulk of the meal. I eat very little meat. I eat very little, starchy, carby things. I mean, when I do, I really make it count. I'll eat an entire pot of macaroni and cheese to myself. But I ate a whole roast chicken yesterday in my kitchen alone. But I think that it's having more variety of vegetables on your table and, having things like whole grains already cooked for you in your refrigerator. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of asking yourself, what am I going to make? So if you look in your fridge and you have a fennel bulb and some carrots and maybe some grains and herbs, like you already have what could be a really great dinner without having to overthink it and just saying, oh, I'm just going to order something online, or I'm just going to go get a burger, or I'm going to, you kind of have to think for your future self and plan ahead in order to make it something that is actually doable. And part of the way that I combat that is just not keeping stuff in the house that I wouldn't be proud to eat, I guess.
She says she hopes her recipes and tips can be a starting point for at-home cooks who can then personalize the options to their own tastes.
Every time I cook, I kind of try to take it as an opportunity to make something new, especially when kind of faced with the reality that I'm going to keep writing recipes indefinitely, hopefully for the rest of my life. So I rarely make the same thing twice. I'll make a version of something, or there's a technique that I love, but, I try to kind of always do something new and different just to kind of experiment and see, oh, what if I roasted it with this or at this temperature instead of this temperature, or rubbed it with that first, or, marinated this overnight, or, there's a lot of different ways to cook stuff. And I try to kind of, every time I'm doing it, take an opportunity to do it differently. So to have a favorite recipe in the book now, especially, I'm kind of trying to move on, but there's certain things that do follow me. In the summertime, I do a lot of grilling, of course. So I'm making, versions of, like the bronzino with preserved lemon, or, the shrimp with the garlic. I like a lot of seafood in the summer. And then, in the springtime, I don't think that there's any better way to eat a steak than with buttered radish toast. So I make a lot of that, or just, variation on that.
Ultimately, Roman says the power of her cookbook, and of any cookbook really, comes in what people make of them and the impact it can hopefully have on other people's lives.
Nothing makes me happier when people say, oh, I haven't cooked in years, or I haven't bought a new cookbook in 3 years, but someone told me I had to have this one. And, my daughter doesn't eat kale, but she ate your salad. And my husband doesn't even like pork chops, but he couldn't wait for me to make this again. There's a lot of feedback that I get from people that is sort of the best case scenario for me. And really what it is feeling like I'm making a difference in their eating habits and the way that they're cooking, and kind of creating new rituals for them. And that's the best thing that can happen for sure. And that was sort of the goal behind it, is that I wanted to create something that was like a new classic for people in their homes, and something that would be able to sit next to their stove, and something that they reach for again and again. And whether it becomes something they adapt and make their own, or they're following the recipe exactly the same each time, it doesn't really matter. The fact that that book is now part of their home life is really cool.
For more tips, tricks, and recipes to improve your own meals at home, Alice and Roman's book, Dining In, is available now. A link to the recipe for Roman's salted chocolate chunk shortbread cookies, along with links for more information about all of our guests, is available at our site, viewpointsonline.net. You can find us on Twitter at Viewpoints Radio. Our show is written and produced by Evan Rook. Our executive producer is Reed Pence. Our production director is Sean Waldron. I'm Marty Peterson.